Welcome and thanks for joining us for our ACI HR series, Hot Topics and How to Initiate Change. And today we will be talking about improving results through cultural accountability. And I'm Jen Galt, Education Program Manager for ACI. And I just want to remind everybody to please remain muted throughout the program. And we encourage you to ask questions, thank our speaker. So you can either do that by dropping it in the chat feature or unmuting and asking any questions that you might have. And if you'd like, please select the speaker view in the upper right-hand corner of your screen so you're able to view the presentation in the best format. And as a reminder, we will be recording this and also putting it on our YouTube channel so you can go back and review later or share with some colleagues if you'd like. Now that we have kind of completed our housekeeping, again, we're here because with the ever-changing economy and regulations, we found that our members are seeking information on the best practices, updated guidelines, effective retention programs, and much more. So this series was born to offer you just that. So each month we're coming to you with important information on topics from our wonderful members and subject matter experts. And we're honored that you've chosen ACI as your HR resource today, and we look forward to working with you each month. And now it is my pleasure to introduce your presenter for today's session, Robert Rich from the Encompass Group.
Hey, thank you so much for the intro, guys. I appreciate you having me on today to chat a little bit about culture and cultural accountability. Just a quick apology. I'm trying to get my camera working, but I don't think we're going to be successful today. So you'll just hear my voice, but you won't be able to see my face. So as Jen said, my name is Robert Rich. I am a human capital consultant with the Encompass Group. We are an HR technology and solutions provider based out of the Dallas, Texas area. So when ACI asked me to maybe join and help with some content, I was really excited to get to put something together and decided, you know what, maybe we'll do culture today, right? That's something that we hear a lot about, but a lot of times it's not really defined or tied to the bottom line, and talk through why it's so important in industry, especially today, going through what we hear as the great resignation, right? Hanging on to people. So to go ahead and get started, as any halfway decent presenter does, before they talk to you, they tell you what they're going to be talking about. So I'm going to set the stage with some facts. We'll talk about some facts about culture, nine facts, and also really kind of define what it is. Again, you hear it a lot, but what does that really mean to you as an organization? I've got a slide on the sciencey stuff. Some of you guys may be familiar with CVF, or the Competing Values Framework. It's been around for a while, so we'll kind of go through that and determine how that kind of plays into an overall organizational culture. I want to share with you guys a quick video. It's about 2 minutes. A speaker called Simon Sinek, fantastic leadership kind of guru, tells a story about an employee named Noah. I think it's a very powerful story, and it really speaks to the importance of an organization's culture. We'll talk about weak cultures versus strong cultures and kind of how to identify and what the differences there are. Who cares, right? Why does any of this even matter? And where do we go from here? So to start off, I want to tell you 9 facts about what culture is and kind of what culture means to me. So when we kind of define it, like, what is it? I mean, it's really just the character and the personality of your organization. It's what makes you unique as a business, kind of the sum of your values, your beliefs, traditions, employees' interactions, their behaviors, all of that stuff kind of encompasses what culture is. And positive workplace culture attracts talent, really drives engagement, and impacts happiness for your employee base internally and at home. And it absolutely impacts your employees' performance. So positive culture, all of that is great. Now you take the negative side of culture, invert everything I just said. So the first fact about culture I want to talk about is culture is learned. You think about taking a new job, right? And recruiters might tell you on the phone, hey, it's a great company culture. You're going to get in and you're going to have a great time. And you might have an idea of what the culture of a company is before you start, but you don't really know until you get in there. And think about kind of the first day of the job. Typically what happens is you maybe go to work with a new colleague and you say, hey, how do things really happen here? How does work really get done? How do meetings work? How is communication managed? All of that is part of a company's culture, and it's all things you kind of learn once you become part of an organization. It's not something that you see before. Culture is set by those at the top, and whether that is with some intention behind it, which is what we love to see, or it's inadvertent, right? Those behaviors that you see from your C level and above, or even your director level, management level, supervisor level, all of those behaviors are observed by the employee base. And those set kind of the rights and the wrongs of what's acceptable within an organization. Employee experiences are what dictate employee behaviors. And I'll give you an example of kind of what I mean by this, right? Say we've got an employee, we'll call him employee one. He just started, last week. He's in his first kind of team meeting, and he sees his supervisor or his manager having a discussion with one of the other members of the team. Maybe the other member of the team has an idea. Supervisor doesn't necessarily agree with it, so there's kind of a debate that goes back and forth between these two parties. Following day, employee one comes to work, and that other employee that he saw debating with the manager isn't there. He never sees him again, right? So his experience in that meeting, wow, if I speak up and I share my ideas or my perspectives, I might not have a job anymore. That's going to dictate his behavior going forward, right? He's going to be a little bit more quiet, more reserved. So the experiences that we're creating for our employee base, we're going to see reflected in the behaviors that they exhibit to us. Culture is difficult to change. Once it is kind of part of the fabric of an organization, it tends to be kind of difficult to unwind that. It's not impossible to change an organization's culture, but it's difficult. And it needs to be very intentional with a project plan in mind, kind of key milestones. There's a way to do it, but there's a lot of thought that needs to be put behind it. And to that end, culture can be controlled. You can determine what you'd like to see your organization become if you're not there already, and put a plan in place to get there. This is an interesting fact. Culture is one of the top reasons that merger and acquisition initiatives fail. During the due diligence phase of an acquisition or a merger, it's one of those parts of a business that's frequently overlooked or undervalued. Say you've got two different companies coming together. One's a very innovative, creative culture, not a whole lot of rules, just really kind of about creating new ideas and new products. And we've got another company that's coming together that's very process focused, very into systems, very rules based. These companies, without the right work done on the front end, a lot of times will not be successful in merging together. And we'll see a loss of revenue, we'll see a loss of productivity, and ultimately a merger and initiative failure simply due to the fact that culture was not given enough attention on the front end. I bolded this one because I think this one is incredibly important. Bad cultures create bad employees. It's not bad employees that are going to be creating bad cultures. It's the other way around. Bad cultures create bad employees. Bad employees create failing companies. And in that, your culture, the culture of your organization directly impacts your bottom line. So this is the CVF I was talking about, or the competing values framework. I think this is a great way of kind of understanding, or at least creating a baseline for how we think about our organization, or how we think about the people in our organization. This has been around for a long time, and I love this. This one is probably my favorite of the frameworks because I think it does a great job of really connecting all the dots. It evaluates individual leadership behavior, determines how those behaviors produce organizational competencies, and then how those kind of competencies produce specific types of value that an organization provides to the market. So you'll see two kind of positive tensions here. There's one between flexibility and stability, and there is another between kind of the internal facing organization and the external facing organization. So this creates four distinct groups, and I'll kind of start at the top right. That is creative, right? So a creative person or a creative culture, these are people or cultures that really, they create first. They love to do new things. They love to experiment. They look to the future. There are a lot of benefits in having a culture that is creative. A lot of times you'll see startups in kind of the creative bucket. They have a lot of groundbreaking tendencies. The downside of the creative culture is the risk, right? There's typically not a lot of scalability. There are not a lot of processes. There are not a lot of rules. It's kind of, hey, we create and then we see what happens. You'll see the opposite of creative, right? In the bottom left, those are controlling cultures or maybe controlling individuals. Nothing wrong with that. These cultures are held together by rules and processes, places where there is a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. One of the benefits of a control culture is there is very little risk, right? Everything is by the book. We follow the rules. We don't stray from that. The kind of downside for a control culture is there's very limited innovation. So you'll see control cultures a lot of times in organizations that have already been very well established. They've already got their products, they work. They may implement some new products from time to time, but by and large, sustainability is one of the key factors in control cultures. Looking at the other side here of this square, we've got competitive and collaborative, and they're opposite. So competitive cultures, really goal focused. They're especially focused on the short-term goals. Downside, everyone, it's kind of every employee for themselves, right? There's a lack of collaboration or sustainable relationship buildings. The goal of competitive cultures is we win, and we win is at all costs, whether that's at a team or that's as the individual. Opposite is collaborative, right? And kind of common sense. Rather than focusing on winning in itself, this group focuses on the sustainability, working together, really achieving that common goal. And these cultures are held together by their shared values. So the primary difference between these two are speed and sustainability. So competitive cultures, they get things done faster, but they're not always sustainable. It's at the expense of anything else. So if we can meet the goal, but we break the entire team down entirely, we see a lot of resignations, a lot of turnover, doesn't matter because we've met the goal in a competitive culture. Collaborative kind of takes the other approach, maybe works a little bit more slowly, but they focus on getting the job done right. So to kind of sum up on this one, all organizations, we've got to have employees in every quadrant of this chart here to be successful. And all of these quadrants need to be synced up successfully to work. So no matter what quadrant you fall into, whether you're creative, controlling, or competitive, and you probably already kind of have an idea of which bucket you fall into, there are strong and weak versions of every bucket of this kind of culture, this culture chart here. So I wanted to give you this framework today to kind of just start thinking about. This isn't going to be the primary focus of our meeting, but it is going to be helpful for you to understand. We talk about, hey, how do we get our culture to work the best as we can, regardless of which cylinder it falls into. So bear with me. I kind of debated back and forth whether I wanted to share this with you guys. I thought, maybe I'll just tell the story, but I think Simon Sinek, I don't know if you may be familiar with him. He is kind of a leadership guru. He's a leadership consultant. He's an author. A lot of great content he produces around culture and how to be a great leader and how to foster great cultures. He tells this story about his experience with one particular employee. And I think it is a very powerful story, and it holds a lot of water in what we're going to be talking about here in a moment. So I'll give you, before I hit play, I'll just give you a heads up. You might want to turn your speakers down a little bit. This might come across a little bit loud, but it's worth hearing. So I'm going to go ahead and play it now.
I'll tell you a true story. A few months ago, I stayed at the Four Seasons in Las Vegas. It is a wonderful hotel. And the reason it's a wonderful hotel is not because of the fancy beds. Any hotel can go and buy a fancy bed. The reason it's a wonderful hotel is because of the people who work there. If you walk past somebody at the Four Seasons and they say hello to you, you get the feeling that they actually wanted to say hello to you. It's not that somebody told them that you have to say hello to all the customers, say hello to all the guests, right? You actually feel that they care. Now, in their lobby, they have a coffee stand. And one afternoon, I went to buy a cup of coffee, and there was a barista by the name of Noah who was serving me. Noah was fantastic. He was friendly and fun, and he was engaging with me. And I had so much fun buying a cup of coffee, I actually think I gave 100% tip, right? He was wonderful. So as is my nature, I asked Noah, do you like your job? And without skipping a beat, Noah says, I love my job. And so I followed up. I said, what is it that the Four Seasons is doing that would make you say to me, I love my job? And without skipping a beat, Noah said, throughout the day, managers will walk past me and ask me how I'm doing, if there's anything that I need to do my job better. He said, not just my manager, any manager. And then he said something magical. He says, I also work at Caesar's Palace. And at Caesar's Palace, the managers are trying to make sure we're doing everything right. They catch us when we do things wrong. He says, when I go to work there, I like to keep my head under the radar and just get through the day so I can get my paycheck. He says, here at the Four Seasons, I feel I can be myself. Same person, entirely different experience from the customer who will engage with Noah. So we in leadership are always criticizing the people. We're always saying, we got to get the right people on the bus. I've got to fill my team. I got to get the right people. But the reality is, it's not the people. It's the leadership. If we create the right environment, we will get people like Noah at the Four Seasons. If we create the wrong environment, we will get people like Noah at Caesar's Palace.
So I think that was just, can't say it any better than that, right? The experience that was created for him is indicative of what we are striving towards when we are trying to create a culture that employees want to be a part of. So just kind of reviewing his story there. Well, why was the Four Seasons such a great hotel, right? The first thing he said was the people that work there. One of the things that I noticed when I heard him tell that for the first time is it wasn't just Noah's manager who was, great and engaging with him and asking if he could, help him do his job anyway, or better in any way. It was every manager. So when every manager is rowing the same direction, every leader in an organization, that is what we call a cultural norm. Like that is just part of the fabric of that organization. That is what we're striving towards. And we think about, how does culture tie to the bottom line or the overall revenue of a company? This is a great example. If Simon was able to buy that coffee, maybe there was a coffee booth closer to his hotel room. Maybe it was even a little bit cheaper. Maybe instead of $4 a cup, maybe it's $3 a cup. Do you think Simon is going to walk down to the main lobby, maybe pay an additional $1 for this cup of coffee because he knows that Noah is going to be working there, or maybe an employee like Noah? This is just part of how this particular booth runs. I would argue that 9 times out of 10, the answer to that question is always going to be yes. And this is a concept that translates across all industries, whether you are selling a cup of coffee, whether you're selling a house, whether you're working in Target and you're just a pleasant person who's checking someone out at the checkout booth there. It translates everywhere. So we have to ask ourselves in our own organizations, are we allowing our Noah to be the real Noah, right? Are we allowing our employees to come and be their authentic selves when they get to work? Are they comfortable here? Is this a place they like being? You ask most leaders of organizations, kind of director level and above. Yes, absolutely. Sure. Yes, we definitely are. Problem is that leaders more often than not have a very skewed view of their own company's culture because they don't get the kind of how things really work. They don't get the true, candid, honest feedback from the bottom up, because that is a very difficult thing to give a leader, even if you feel like you're close. Difficult feedback because you've got skin in the game. You don't know what the result is going to be from that feedback, especially if you've had an experience like we talked to on the first slide, right? Somebody expressed their opinion and maybe wasn't there anymore. People tend to be more reserved. The next thing I want to share, I've got a friend, and he's a really kind of big name in like the organizational development circuit. And I say that, I'm not, name dropping. I'm not going to tell you who he is, but he said something to me one time. We were having a discussion about culture, and what he said has stuck with me. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I thought it was so powerful. He said, if they can't talk to you, they'll talk about you. And kind of think about your workplace, right? The leaders that maybe don't have the strongest relationships with their teams, those are the teams that you see a lot of maybe gossip around. You see a lot of employee relations issues because these teams are talking about this leader because they don't feel comfortable talking to this leader. So that's really something important to remember. So what we want to do is since leaders typically have this skewed version of what their culture looks like, we need to figure out how we take appropriate steps to evaluate our culture and determine what steps we need to take to improve. So this is the three little pigs, and I'll tell you why they're on here. This is something I was thinking of the other day I was putting this presentation together. So full disclosure, I've got a 3-year-old. And a lot of times he's in that kind of why stage, like, why, Daddy, why? He was asking me, Daddy, what are you doing? Daddy's working. What? Why? Well, Daddy has to make a presentation. Why? Just because he has friends that need to see it. What? So I'm trying to say, okay, what? And I'm thinking, he's not old enough yet, but I'm thinking, gosh, he's going to get to that age where I have to explain things to him, and I'm going to have to think of ways to, put analogies in place where he understands what I'm working on because he's going to be curious. So I thought, how would I explain a weak culture versus a strong culture to a child, right? And it just kind of hit me, the Three Little Pigs story. And I think this resonates because this is a great way to illustrate kind of 3 buckets of where culture might be today. So thinking of those pigs, you remember the straw house, the wood house, and the stone house, right? We need to understand which house that we live in today in terms of culture to really understand what are the types of changes we need to make to improve that house. And you might say, hey, why does the strength of my house matter, right? Who cares if I'm in the straw house or the stone house? We also remember the big bad wolf, okay? And in our scenario, the big bad wolf is going to be the competition in the market. Big bad wolf is always trying to blow your house down. So we think about the house made of straw. That was the easiest house for that wolf to blow down. You remember, it didn't take him any effort at all. He was just able to blow down and kind of move on to the next one. We're going to say the house made of straw is a weak culture or a toxic culture. And what are the signs of a weak or a toxic culture? You've got no core values. You've got poor examples set by your leadership team. It's the do as I say, not as I do. I expect you to be working by 8:00 a.m. sharp every day, but I'm going to roll in about 10:30 when I feel like it. There's a lack of employee acknowledgement. Employee does a great job consistently. Manager just expects that as part of his day-to-day, doesn't really say anything about it. These are the type of cultures where employees tend to maybe keep their heads down a little bit. You say fly under the radar, just kind of go in, get your paycheck, and go home. There's a fear of failure because you think, hey, if I make a mistake, I might not have a job anymore. So there's a very limited amount of calculated risk taking, and calculated risk taking can be a good thing. These cultures just don't have that. And you'll see uncontrollable gossip in the workplace. You remember, if they can't talk to you, they'll talk about you. So the results we get from a toxic culture, we've got low productivity, low employee engagement. Our HR professionals on the phone know there is a high volume of employee relations issues that come from these. So high risk from a litigation standpoint. There's a poor company reputation in the marketplace. And right now, when it's so hard to find talent, the last thing you want is for people to jump on Glassdoor and see a bunch of bad reviews, or jump on Indeed and see people talking about how horrible your company is to work for. There are high turnover costs, high hiring costs, you got lost revenue, and straw houses easily tumble to the big bad wolf, which in our case, remember, is external market competition. So then we move up, house made of wood. This is a stronger house. This is a good house, house made of wood. It's a good place to be. There's nothing wrong with living in a house made of wood for the most part. We're going to say this is a strong culture. So signs of a strong culture are employees exhibit your core values in the workplace. Leadership sets positive examples. Employees receive regular recognition and acknowledgement. If they do a good project, maybe they get some kudos for that. And collaboration tends to be open and constructive. But even in strong cultures, that difficult feedback, especially if it's from the bottom up, right? Hey, the way we were communicated to in that last meeting was, I think it could have been tweaked a little bit. Or, hey, your sales presentation, I noticed something that could have gone a little bit different. I want to provide you the feedback. Or, hey, the last time you built that house, there are a couple of areas that I think you could be doing a little bit better. There's a hesitancy to exchange that feedback, even in strong cultures. Results of a strong culture, you've got higher productivity, higher employee engagement, you've got fewer employee relations issues, so you've got less risk from a litigation standpoint. Your company reputation is positive in the marketplace, which is what we all really need, especially today. Lower turnover and hiring costs, so we've got more growth, more revenue, and wood houses do not easily tumble. So moving on, where we all want to be is in this house made of stone. So there is one key difference in an ideal culture and in a strong culture. So in a sense of an ideal culture, employees are exhibiting those core values in the workplace, but they're also exhibiting them in their personal lives as well. They kind of live the fabric of the company. It's part of who they are. That's an ideal culture. Leadership sets consistently positive examples. Lead by example. Recognition for employees is handed out freely, openly. There's acknowledgement on a regular basis for jobs well done. And that collaboration, whether it's positive or it's constructive, it flows regularly and it flows without defensiveness. These cultures are the hardest to kind of get right and to achieve. But if you are able to do it, you've got ideal productivity, ideal engagement, you've got fewer ER issues still. So fewer rules are required. Less risk because people are just behaving, people are happy. You've got a positive reputation in the marketplace. Almost no turnover and hiring costs. I mean, turnover is incredibly minimal in these ideal cultures, or we'll call them the houses made of stone. You've got more growth, more revenue, and these houses do not fall. In fact, these houses a lot of times become you've seen Breaking Bad, become the one who knocks. You become the big bad wolf if you were in the house made of stone. So we talk about how we build these houses, right? Let's think about what goes in to making a straw house. Lack of core values is the material, that's the straw. We've got lack of clear communication is the rope, and a fear of failure is the mud. And you look at all these materials, right? Straw, rope, and mud. None of these translate into a wood house. So if you want to go from a straw house to a wood house, you've got to get rid of all of this. There is nothing that you want to take and use to build your house made of wood. We don't need any of these materials in our toolbox. Now looking at wooden houses, right, and what they are made of. They've got strong core values, they've got open communication, and they've got employee recognition. So, nails, you've got drywall, and you've got wood, and that's how you make a wood house. All of these materials, if you're already in the wood house, they translate over to a stone house as well. But there is one key material that is missing that stone houses get right that wooden houses do not. And that is the stone itself, the regular, open, honest feedback. That is the hardest part to get right. And there has got to be a concerted effort for your employee base, all the way from the top down on feedback training. It's absolutely imperative in developing these strong, sustainable workplace cultures, regardless of which of those quadrants that you fall into. So after we've assessed, we've identified change opportunities, say we put a plan into place, the success is measurable, we've got a project plan, and we get to the end of it, what's the result? From a culture standpoint, this is our big bad wolf now. He's sleepy, he's tired, he's got his little bow on, he doesn't mess with you anymore. So that is what we're trying to achieve. We're all trying to get to the stone house. So why does any of this even matter, right? Like, how does this tie to dollars? This data is all from Towers Watson. They are a consultancy group, very, very highly acclaimed, kind of in the HR space, or really in the consultancy space in general. They do a lot of really great data collection, and this is all from them. So having a culture that attracts high talent can lead to 33% higher revenue. 81% of employees report they're going to work longer hours if they feel valued and the employer is empathetic. 86% of employees are not going to apply or continue to work for a company that's got a bad reputation, or with employees or with the public. Can't stress how important that is right now, where it is so difficult to get any kind of great talent. When employees are engaged, absenteeism is lowered by 40%, 41%, productivity is boosted by 17%, turnover is cut by 24%. We talk about engagement. There are different ways to measure that. Maybe we'll get into that in a future deck. But these are very, very high numbers, right? And you think about a time that you've been part of a toxic culture. Like, did you want to stay, or did you want to go get a new job? So this stuff, I think, is really powerful. You want to change the culture, and you think this is an initiative you want to take on, and you need to show your leadership team why it's important. This is the kind of data that you're going to need to provide to them. So you might be thinking, gosh, how do I know which house I live in today? Do I live in straw? Is it straw and a half? Do I live in a wood house? Maybe I'm in a stone house. You may need a complete culture overhaul. You may need just a little tweak. But if you are in need of any work done on your culture, don't underestimate the lift that is required. I mean, this is a big project. As we said, it's inherently difficult for leaders to gauge their own cultures, but that's without the assistance of outside consultant or consultancy team. Outside consultants and consultancy teams, they don't have skin in the game, right? You could have your CHRO do a culture assessment project, but they've still got to present that feedback back to the CEO of the company. And if you've got a culture where the CEO is not open to that feedback, what's going to happen to the CHRO when they present those findings? So ideally, you always want to leverage an outside party to help you with culture assessments and plans. As part of these assessments and plans, you've got to do employee interviews, analyze every single level and business unit within an organization. You identify subcultures, maybe supervisory teams or managerial teams that don't maybe align with the rest of the organization, and we've got to figure out, hey, what are we trying to do here? Which of these is better? Where are we trying to align? And we've got to align them appropriately with the larger organizational culture. Maybe we need to change the subculture, or maybe we need to change the larger culture. It just kind of depends on the project. Buy-in from the C-level, this is super important, is imperative. If there is not momentum from the top, culture initiatives always fail. And this is because, the sales team or your business development team say, hey, I'm supposed to do this culture stuff, but that's not going to generate me any revenue today, so I'm going to jump on the phones. You got your project team saying, yeah, no, I'm supposed to do the culture stuff, but I've got these deadlines, and that's real work, right? Quote unquote real work. So that's what I'm going to spend my time on today. So if you don't have this push from the top saying this is where our focus needs to be, we've got a laser focus on culture, and we're going to improve it. We're going to do what it takes to get where we need to be. It's going to fail. And a lot of times it's difficult to get everybody on the same page, because this is not a revenue generator, right? This is not, or at least an immediate revenue generator. This is the long game that we're playing here. This is not something that we're going to see profit from next week or next month. So that's why sometimes it can be a little bit difficult, and where your outside consultants can help you. A plan for improvement must be outlined and implemented. We've got to have key milestones. We've got to identify where our areas of focus are. We've got to determine how we're going to measure success of our culture project. And we've also got to identify maybe some potential side effects. Maybe we see an initial turnover increase depending on where we start. And these people have self-selected out, and that's okay. Maybe they aren't going to be kind of long-term fits with where we want to go in terms of culture. So all of that stuff needs to be considered on the front end if you're going to be doing a project like this. Big part of culture revamps or kind of culture reinvigorations or training programs, especially around constructive feedback, they've got to be implemented and seen through to completion. And engagement has got to be monitored continually throughout the length of the project and even beyond. We've got to have a pulse on the employees, how they're feeling. What is the real picture of the pulse of the organization? And once you can implement that culture where feedback and being honest is okay, you get a much clearer view into how you are actually doing as a leader and as an organization. So I won't keep you guys any longer with that. I appreciate your time today. I hope you found that helpful or interesting or valuable. I've got my information on the screen here. Love to chat with you if you want to give me a call, shoot me an email, anything like that. But that's it for me, guys. I appreciate it.